Here's a quick tutorial on your coin flip simulation. If you select this, it's going to open up a file that looks like this, CoinFlipExperiment, and it's going to be building on your last coin flip tutorial. So when we got to the bottom of this one here, we're expected to then move to the next one. In this lesson, we are going to create software to conduct this experiment. We're going to learn a little bit about using loops, and we're going to make and test a hypothesis about app inventors' ability to generate random numbers. Our user interface will look like this, and we'll build that based upon our previous app, CoinFlip V1. So start by saving CoinFlip V1 to CoinFlipExperiment. This is what we were just working on. I'm going to save this project as BSU CoinFlip Experiment. Okay, check. We've renamed it. Okay, CoinFlipExperiment app. As you can see from the screenshot right here, the app is going to let you select a number of times the coin flips in the value of n. It then flips it that many times and reports back the number of heads and tails. The way we're going to do that is we're going to build this application, and it's going to go and use a for loop, a very, very important piece or concept in computer science is looping through a desired amount of iterations until you get to a desired result. And each time the iteration takes place between the beginning and the ending, some sort of a program can be executed, whether it's just counting or creation of objects. Lots of things can happen in a for loop. So we're going to just fiddle a little bit around with that today. And let's start right here. So I'm going to begin building my user interface by using a text box at the very beginning and shrink the image and add a global variable. Okay, so over here, what I need to do is to I'm going to bring in a label at the very top here, and we're going to have that label go for the width fill parent, and the text is going to read simulate flipping a coin n times. Now let's make it a little easier on the eyes. Let's put about maybe 20. Let's maybe bold that, and let's center it. Okay, looks a little bit better. That flip the coin is good. We're supposed to make this to a 50-50, I believe, ratio. So okay, so we have a little coin there, and next we need to enter in a text box, or not a text box, a label for some instructions right here. And the text should read enter n, which is between 1 and 1,000, and then press go to start the simulation. Width, let's make it a little bit. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Let's make the height. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, then we need to enter in a text box with a button and a label so that we can get n going. so we can get the user's anticipated number of times that this is going to flip, which would be then provided in the variable n. So we need to, I'm going to put in a horizontal arrangement here. Inside that, I need a label. I'll need a text box. And I'm going to need a button. So this label and label. So it's telling me to enter n. Hint. We can even do a hint on this one. Hint for text box. Enter n value. So that'll come up. And this is my go button. I'm going to read just to have it say go. Okay, so our user interface looks to be built pretty good. Let's take a look at our back end on our blocks editor. Let's clean it up a little bit. Let's expand those. Okay, so right here is where we were at. We need to create a global variable n. And when the simulation starts, reset the number of heads and number of tails to 0. Then use a for loop to flip the coin n times. Here's what the loop might look like. And then create a procedure for flipping a coin, flip coin above. Instead of embedding all the blocks in the loop, we can do what is called refactoring, and it makes the code a little bit easier to read and maybe a little bit more efficient. But you also could look at this here. You can leave the flip the coin button to let the user flip the coin one at a time, or you can remove it all the way together. Okay, so let's continue building our app. So we need to have our variables. We have num heads, num tails. Those will be helpful for our procedure to update our labels. We have a variable for coin, and we need to now have a variable for n. We're initializing all these to 0. So now then what we need to do is we need a go button. So we have our go button, we need it to do something. So this is an event. When the go button is clicked, we need to handle it. So the way that we're going to be doing that, we need to, first and foremost, we need to figure out what n is going to be. N is going to be provided to us by the user in their text box. So we need to set n up. So we need to set n to whatever the text box text is. So we have our text box here. We're going to grab its text. That's the first piece. So we now have a value for n. We need to then do a control statement, an if-then statement. So we have various checks on this. First thing, we want to check to make sure that the user actually puts in a number inside our box here instead of a letter or a string or a word, because right now all we're looking for is a number. So we need to make sure to first check. We have multiple checks in our if statement here. So we need to check to see that it is a number first and foremost. Then we need to check to see that it is less than or equal to 1,000. And finally, we need to see that it is either 1 or higher, greater than or equal to 1. So there are 3 checks we need to look into prior to this going past the if statement. So those 3 checks are going to be very important. And the way we're going to do those is through a logic block and AND. And you can build these together. So right now I have 2 conditions. I'm going to create a third condition by adding in another AND block. So now I have 3 conditions that can be met in my if statement here. So first we're going to check to see if n is a number. So we're going to go into our math block, look down here, and to see, is it a number? So we're going to check first off to get the value of n from the text box and make sure that the user typed in a number. Next is we need to make sure that it is less than or equal to 1,000, and then greater than and equal to 100. So we do have those available here in our math block. This here you can see has some features on drop down. So I'm going to say this is going to be less than or equal to. And what I'm going to provide here is to check to see that n, the value that the user placed in there, is going to be less than or equal to 1,000. So there's our second check. And our last check is going to be to see that it is greater than or equal to 1. And I'm going to duplicate this, hopefully, that we can switch these around a little bit. And I've done that. Okay, so let's read through this. We're going to set n to whatever value is in that text box. Is first off, is it a number? And is it in our range? If those are all true, an AND statement means that all these have to be true. An OR statement could be either or, and this particular situation, there's 3 conditions that need to be met. Next thing we're going to do is if those are met, then we're going to make sure that we reset our values for our heads and tails. So we're going to set our num heads to 0 in case, because we're going to need to use those here. And we're going to set our num tails to 0 as well. That way we have a good starting point. And now we bring in our for loop. Okay, so following that then statement, if these are good, then we do this and we move into our for loop. It says from I is what we had here, I to I from 1 to the value that is typed in our text box, which will be global n. We're going to count by ones. And every time we go through this procedure right here, we are going to be calling flip coin. It's not a procedure, it's a for loop, sorry. Every time we go through the for loop, we are going to call the procedure flip coin. So we're going to start at 1. Say, for instance, the user in their text box typed in a 5. We're going to start at 1, 2, 5 by ones. Each time we go through that, we are calling the procedure flip coin. Following that, we do also need to then update our labels. And let's check our application. So I'm going to connect my user interface, my AI companion, to see where we're at. All right, first look at the user interface for the application. It does look pretty good. So we have our text box. It's going to take in a value. So I'm going to type in a number, let's say 5, and then go. And you can see the results are 3 and 2. So out of 5 iterations through that loop of did the flip coin procedure, and the results were 3 heads and 2 tails. So I'm going to try again with maybe, let's say, 100. And here is the result. We're getting close to 50% with 46 and 54. I'm going to do one more 0 on this one. I'm going to go, hopefully, and we'll take some time. I can hear that it is trying to report out heads and tails. Okay, so out of 1,000, it pulled 520 times it heads, and then it resulted in 480 tails. So out of 1,000, that's what it did here. So we were working pretty good. I can see that there is a little bit of a bug as far as my code. I'm going to take a look at that real quick. I don't think I need to be using my text-to-speech feature in this. Every time FlipCoin is called, it is slowing things down a bunch because it's basically telling my little companion there to say heads or tails roughly 1,000 times. So I would say for this particular one, we pull out those text-to-speech features and make the program a little more efficient. So going back to your handout, this is the experiment. We've done that. It works pretty good. The hypothesis is that hopefully we should come out half the time heads, half the time tails. And I'd like you to go through this experimental procedure, do 1 and 2, and then just self-reflection. Don't need to turn these in. Answer these 3 questions here regarding your coin flip experiment. All right, that was your coin flip tutorial, coin flip experiment. Thank you.